Good afternoon, and welcome back. So our session this afternoon is on the top trends in data and analytics for 2023. And I get the privilege of presenting this on behalf of the entire data and analytics team and the 12 or so analysts who put this together. What I'm going to do in the next 30 minutes or so is really to just skip across the 10 trends. And what you will find after the session in the back of your conference navigator is a little bit more detail on each of the trends, because we really can't do this justice in a 30-minute session. But what I would like to do before I start looking at the trends is to frame a little bit how we think about trends, if you'll permit me to do that. So, what's wrong with this image? This is the original bridge to nowhere, okay? It's the Choluteca Bridge in Honduras. And Honduras is somewhere that is prone to hurricanes on a frequent basis. And this bridge was designed by some great Japanese engineers to withstand hurricanes, okay? They looked at it from every angle, and they built this bridge to withstand hurricanes, and it did. The bridge actually was commissioned in the same year that Hurricane Mitch hit Honduras. And the bridge survived with only minor damage. But what you see from this image here is that all of that surrounding infrastructure has gone. All the roads that it was designed to connect have gone, okay? But even worse, Hurricane Mitch moved the river as well. So that's why we say it's the bridge to nowhere. It goes nowhere, but it also doesn't go over the water. So I'd really like you to keep this visual in mind as you start thinking about the investments that you're making, okay? This was clearly a suboptimal return on investment for infrastructure because it failed to deliver value. And we don't want you to end up in this position. We don't want you to turn on some new technology just as this new trend hits that negates all the good work that you've done in releasing and turning your platform on. So I'd like you to keep this in mind. And the reason that I bring this up is when we think about strategies, and we get to review a lot of data and analytics strategies within the team, very infrequently is there any reference to trends, okay? Yet we probably do need to be thinking about the trends in society, in our industries, in data and analytics, as we're putting these strategies together to future-proof our investments. So, let's explore how we think about trends. Now, most of us think linearly, okay? We think that tomorrow will just be an extension of today. So, self-driving cars and flying cars, meals in pills and that kind of thing, okay? Now, the problem is that technology does not evolve linearly like this. Not at all. Who remembers IBM's Deep Blue beating Garry Kasparov at chess, the world chess champion? Who remembers what year that was? Without Googling it. It was 1997. That's 26 years ago, okay? So what we've seen is, that was one of the first times that we thought, oh wow, AI is this big, huge trend. That was 26 years ago. There'll be people at this conference who aren't even 26. They definitely won't remember that time. So the point is that oftentimes it takes a while for a trend to emerge. It starts off as a blip and then eventually transitions to becoming a trend. And we, as technologists, tend to be really interested in the things that are SNT compliant, shiny new thing compliant, okay? And when we look at those new technologies and the possibilities of the new technologies, we tend to overestimate their transformative effect short term, but we underestimate the second and the third and the fourth order impact of those technologies and those trends. So if we think about an example of driverless cars, and we say, okay, driverless cars, what does that actually mean? Well, it means that our kids probably won't need driver's licenses. It means that there will be less cars on the road, okay? Great, that's first order thinking. But if we take that a step further and say, okay, and so what? What is the second order impact of that? Then we might get to a point where we say, okay, if there are less cars on the road, there's less driver's licenses needed, there'll be less drivers, less taxi drivers, less lorry drivers. If we have less cars on the road, then surely we'll need less parking within our cities, okay? That won't keep some of the companies very happy, but we'll need less parking, okay? Then if we think, and so what again? If we have that free, now prime real estate in the middle of our cities, what could we potentially use that for? What about urban eco-farming, okay? Another trend, the two trends emerging, and that free space within the city taking some pressure off another area that is of human concern. So, and that's the power of trends, okay? They evolve over time from multiple blips, in the case of AI, to a full-form trend, and sometimes they overlap. They go beyond the first-order impact, and we need to think about going beyond the first-order impact for those trends. So, let's move on to the trends proper. About this time every year, we start to think about what the trends are that will have the most impact on organizations for the next 12 months. So the trends that I'm going to show you today were actually put together at about this time last year, because we kick off our data and analytics summits in March. And this was the long list of trends or potential trends that we started with, okay? So it's from the entire data and analytics team. And what you will see here is that we are in an environment with a lot of change. And as you look at these, some of them will be relevant to you, some of them won't be. Some of them might not be relevant today, but they'll be relevant tomorrow. But what I'll encourage you to do as we go through the trends and the short list of trends is to think about the potential impact on your organizations beyond the first order. So if that was the long list, this is the short list of trends. Okay, so again, from the entire data and analytics team, these are the trends that we're going to focus on. And then what we found as we looked at these 10 trends is they all rolled up into this kind of overarching theme, if you like, which was about driving value at scale. Okay, what is the business impact of the investments that are coming from our data and analytics initiatives? Okay, how do we drive this value at scale, and how do we drive this value enterprise-wide? And then when we looked at it a little bit closer, what actually happened is we found that there were 3 sub-themes that emerged. Think like a business, from platforms to ecosystems, which is, how do we scale what we're doing, or how do we operate like a business, and don't forget the humans. Okay, and these are what we'll look at. And if you take nothing else away from our conversation today, keep in mind this framework as you're looking at your investments. Think like a business, operate like a business, and don't forget the humans. Let's explore the first theme. And the first theme is think like a business. What does that even mean? Well, every data and analytics organization, or every organization, needs to have an executive who is responsible for data and analytics. Now, that might not manifest itself in the role of a chief data and analytics officer. It might be the CIO who is responsible for data and analytics. It might be somebody within the CIO's organization. We see quite a varying degree of places where that function lives. The important thing is that it's empowered to affect change wherever it lives. Now, for the sake of this discussion, I appreciate we're primarily a CIO audience. I'm just going to call it the data and analytics leader, or the DNA leader. Okay. So think like a business. Let's think like the CEO of data. What do we need to do as the CEO of data? Well, similar to the conversations that I'm sure you're having with people, we need to stop being order takers. We need to be proactive about our vision, sell our vision, and stop being order takers and move away from focusing on things like just data management, or just data governance, or just producing reports. Successful data and analytics leaders are heavily involved in digital transformation. They are proactive, and they are not making incremental changes or delivering incremental value, such as incremental revenue. They're making step changes. They're looking for data monetization opportunities, looking at new revenue opportunities. So, be proactive, sell the vision for DNA, and be accountable. This one's really interesting right now, because if that chatbot that you unleash happens to be really, really offensive, you're going to have to own that. So, think like a business. Our first trend is value optimization. And this is something that we've been talking about for a very, very long time. And as an analyst, I cover DNA strategy, I cover governance, I cover master data management, and I cover data-driven culture. And across all of those topics, my most prevalent inquiry, or my most prevalent client inquiry, is about linking data to value, data to business outcomes, and articulating that value. Okay, so we've still got quite a long way to go to actually being really good at that. Yet the value piece is how we prioritize what we do. You know, what do we deliver? How do we measure what we deliver? And where do we put our resources? How do we prioritize the use of our resources? So what we really require here is an internally consistent way of evaluating the initiatives that we prioritize. Now, I hope Rita may have talked about the enterprise value equation in her session yesterday. Rita Selam is my team member in the DNA team. That's one thing that you can leverage, one framework that you can leverage for value. The other is the Gartner Business Value Model, which is one I particularly like because it draws a direct line of sight between the data and the outcomes, which is really, really helpful if you're trying to get buy-in for a business case, if you were trying to get stewards to play ball and take on the responsibility for governing their data, or if you're trying to get buy-in for your data and analytics strategy. It's all about the outcomes. And the reality is, these trends are not in any particular order, but if you're not doing this one, the rest of them are relevant. Trend number 2, managing your AI risk. Now, as I said, the cycle for this is we start thinking about this time every year. So when this deck was put together, ChatGPT, sorry it's taken me all of 4 minutes to mention ChatGPT, wasn't quite as big a trend as it is right now. So when we put this together, the guidance was really to just be ready, okay? It was to make sure that you have a consistent set of principles in place for the use and for the adoption of AI, and that you have the governance roles and process in place, okay? And again, as business owners, as the CEO of data, you need to be accountable for the inputs and for the outputs and for that seriously offensive chatbot if that happens to you. So, develop AI risk management skills and investigate our data and our analytics for bias. Trend number 3, observability. Observability provides a direct line of sight into our data and analytics ecosystem. It helps us understand what our data and analytics is doing. So, where is the data created? Who is using the data? Who's responsible for the data? Where is the analytics being created? What outcomes is it impacting? Who's leveraging it for that? This line of sight into our data and analytics ecosystems helps us speed up root cause analysis for challenges, and it helps us understand the ecosystem to keep our data and analytics costs under control. And that's why this is becoming a trend. The Big Brother piece is somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but there is very much value to this. Trend number 4, one of my pet topics is data sharing. And this is an interesting one. Look, our world's becoming increasingly complex. And in order to understand that world, we need the data to show us what the world is doing. And a partial view of that data is not always useful. Not only can it be not useful, but it can be detrimental. Okay, so as I said, one of the topics that I cover is governance and master data management and creating that single trusted view of customer or product, etc. And decisions require something like master data management to give you the trust and that holistic view of that data. Okay. Now, what's interesting about data sharing is that we've been talking about this for a long time, but we started off by saying, yeah, data sharing's nice. And then it was, data sharing's probably a good thing to look at. Then it was, you really should be looking at data sharing. And now we're saying, data sharing is essential. And it's essential because when you think about, it's not so much that the first reason or the first use case that data was intended for, but when you put that data in the hands of somebody else and look at it in another context, that's when it starts to get really interesting and really exciting. Okay. So, what we have on this slide here is it talks about some architectural designs, such as Data Fabric, that will help you with your data sharing. And of course, things like augmented data integration, augmented data quality, they also support creating trust in that data and connectivity in that data. But on this one, I would also say, don't forget the humans, because the humans are typically the barrier to getting your data sharing right. So we need to build trust in the data, and we need to also think about fostering a data-driven culture. The technologies here are not enough.